What's up, everybody? It's Gabriel Gregson, aka Central Arkansas EAS here. I decided tonight would be a good night to provide a bit of a life update. Recently, you might have noticed, as I just said in the beginning of this video, I changed my channel name to Central Arkansas EAS. Now, when I first did this, a lot of people started asking me questions both on my Discord profile, which also bears that name, as well as my YouTube channel. Why did you change your name? Did you move down to Arkansas? Did your family move down to Arkansas? What's going on? Well, honestly, I don't know if I really answered that question clearly or not with many of these people. So I decided I was going to answer that question today. Not to mention explain and kind of apologize to my Discord followers and friends why I have not been very talkative lately. So, first off, the exciting bit. Earlier this summer, I applied at a center down in Little Rock, Arkansas, down here in Little Rock, Arkansas, for the blind called World Services for the Blind. And it has served blind people in over 70 countries. I think I saw 77 different countries throughout the world since its founding. It is run by the Global Lions Club Forum, so it is run by a nonprofit. It is a nonprofit. And I got accepted in the beginning of July. This was in response to, at ISVI, or Illinois School for the Visually Impaired, where I was previously, I tried college because I wanted to become a TVI, or Teacher of the Visually Impaired. However, I found that college it wasn't for me. It didn't fit me, and I ended up dropping out after failing my first semester class, which was Introduction to Psychology, or Psych 101. And I ended up with a flat-out F in that, so not even close to passing. And it made me feel discouraged for a while. Understandably, I'm sure, for most of you. But then my teachers began asking me to do some research on other places I could go and possibly get a job, if I didn't want to go to college, or other programs that I could go into for potentially trade schools and things like that. Well, then one of my teachers mentioned this place, World Services for the Blind. Now, at the time, the only reason I had heard of it was because a former student from the Illinois School for the Visually Impaired and one of my best buddies my first year up at that school had come down here and done some training. I believe he went into IT. So, yeah, this is also a trade school. And I did some research on it. I wasn't so sure at first, but when I did some research on it, I found that I could go into Assistive Technology Instructor Program, which, in other words, means I could be trained to teach other disabled people like myself, or, deaf people, people with wheelchairs, people with physical disabilities, motor disabilities, all sorts of stuff, how to use their assistive technology. And it didn't require a college degree. Not to mention, then I found out there was a step above the dumbass. Sorry, people don't know how to drive up and down this street. I swear, there's been, already since I've been down here, there's been at least 2 times where I know I've heard a couple car crashes, because I'll hear like this, like this crunch of metal hitting metal, and it's like, that was a car hitting something. And then I've also been hearing for the last couple of nights, we're where this school is located is not exactly the safest part of Little Rock. We're in the, as they call it, the hood zone. We're in the ghetto part of town. And there was one night where I was doing a DXing on my radio, turned it down, I heard police sirens, and all of a sudden I hear, pow, 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 pow. Like, that was gunshots. And I mean, it sounded like it was from a semi-automatic, because it was just boom, 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 boom. You know, so it was kind of creepy, honestly. Especially considering I don't live, when I'm up in Troy, I don't live in the town. I live in the country, where you don't hear noises like that. But anyway, back to my story. So I decided to apply for this program because, as I was saying, there's a step above this called CATIS, C-A-T-I-S, and it's an acronym for Certified Assistive Technology Instructor Specialist. And what that means is not only am I certified to teach people how to use their assistive technology, I am nationally certified and can work with governmental agencies, public schools, private schools, and even possibly schools for the blind/deaf without a college degree. So yeah, I decided to apply, and I started the application process at the end of the school year last year, during May. Started filling out the application and everything. However, we had to go through the state of Illinois Department of Human Services, DHS, and my counselor up there to get a plan set up for me to be possibly paid for in terms of attending this program. Because if you want to know how much this is a month, you're going to be shocked. A month. 1 month. This program, if I was to pay out of pocket, would cost $4,000 to $6,000. Obviously, I do not have that money. I do not have that type of cash, obviously, because I've been working a minimum wage job for the last 2 years. So, obviously I'm not going to have that type of cash. Anyway, so the state finally agreed to pay for for the expense of me going down here. And they agreed on one condition. I have to complete this program. If I flunk this program, that's it. They're dropping all payments and I'm paying the rest of it out. And so far, I think I'm going to thrive and complete this program. So once we got the application sent in over in June, it was just a game of, okay, let's wait and check my email every day for a possible response. Well, then beginning of July rolls around, and I got an acceptance letter from admissions. Now, what was interesting about this, and I had no idea that this was even a thing, is I could have started, because I got accepted right before July 4th, I could have started the next day if I wanted to. However, I chose to hold back my starting until August 12th. Why? Well, for me, I wanted some summer vacation, number one. Number two, my mom's birthday was the 18th of July. Number three, we were planning on a family vacation to Saugatuck, Michigan, which we did indeed go on, which started on, it started on July 19th and went through the 29th. And finally, the last reason was my birthday, my 22nd birthday, was on August 8th, and I wanted to be home for my birthday. So then starting August 12th, we drove all the way down to well, actually starting August 11th, my parents and I, we drove all the way from Troy, Illinois to Little Rock, Arkansas, which for you guys who are interested in how long that took, it's a journey for the fastest route, about six and a half hours. Just jump on Interstate 55 out of Troy, shoot south for a while through southeast Missouri, and then right before you hit Memphis, Tennessee, you merge onto Interstate 40 West to take you through eastern and central Arkansas until you reach Little Rock. Anyway, so then I started at the center the 12th of August, which was a Monday. We drove down on a Sunday, checked into a hotel, and then on the Monday, I started at the center. I arrived, I got settled into my dorm, I unpacked, I, did some general meet and greets with people, but that was really it, because by the time I arrived, it was pretty much just in time for lunch. And by the time I was unpacked, it was around like 4 o'clock, 4:30ish, when classes get out. Because see, classes here are different. They're not like at a public school. You're basically on the ball from 8 to 4:30 with only 2 15-minute breaks and then your lunch period as a break. So you're pretty much getting the actual feeling of working an 8-hour shift. As that Dolly Parton song says, working 9 till 5, what a way to make a living. Sorry, had to put that one in there. But I've used that song as kind of a theme song. Every time I kind of feel in the morning like, I don't want to do anything, I'll turn that song on and be like, nope, you're a 22-year-old now. You need to do this. This is your life. You need to do this. And it's like, you made the choice. You need to do this. So I started classes that Tuesday on the 13th. And I've been doing my classes ever since. Now, first off, what they put you in is called pre-vocational. And that is general types of classes. For example, techniques of daily living, such as cooking, sorting laundry, folding laundry, tying a shoe, packing a suitcase, hanging clothes, let's see, what other things were mentioned? Oh, ironing clothes, tying a tie, making your bed, things that you do every day that a lot of sighted people tend to take for granted that they know how to do. But when you're blind, it's kind of hard. That pre-vocational course also includes general assistive technology, which goes over the basics of course, using a screen reader, which, for a Windows computer, that would be JAWS, JAWS. Yes, same name as the shark in that famous movie, but it actually is an acronym. It stands for Job Access with Speech. And it's been around for a long time. I think it came out in either the late 90s or early 2000s. So it's been around for a long time. And it is the program that is used by governmental agencies, by schools, by pretty much everybody in terms of helping the totally blind folk navigate a computer. Now, another program that they've often used as well is NVDA, which is a free screen reader on Windows that you can install. JAWS is a paid screen reader. It's more expensive. I think I saw somewhere they advertised it from like $20 to $50, which, I know you're probably thinking, well, that's expensive, but for a blind product, that's cheap. For example, this Braille display that I have right here, Hopefully my camera is focusing on it. This thing cost me, I got it at a discount because I got it used. And it still cost me $4,200. Now, if I was to buy the thing outright new, it would cost me $10,000 to get one of those. So Jaws is pretty much a drop in the bucket compared to that. And most blind products are that way. They're very expensive for some reason. I'll never understand why. It's probably just because companies are money hungry and they don't want, they want all your money, basically. Yes, I understand these products are expensive for companies to make too, but there's no real assistance, for example, for people that live paycheck to paycheck. There's no real governmental assistance to get their technology. They have to, at least not nationally. Some states offer it, like Illinois, thank God, but not nationally as far as I'm concerned. As far as I know, there's not a governmental program that will allow for blind people and people with disabilities to receive the technology that they need to succeed, which is sad. They have to pay for it on their own. And like I said, with people that live paycheck to paycheck, that means they're pretty much out in the dust, which one thing that I'm going to address here with blind people, sadly, that's oftentimes a very common thing that happens, because the unemployment rate for blind individuals in particular is disgustingly high. It is disgustingly high because sighted people do not want to hire blind individuals because they are so different to sighted people. Matter of fact, the unemployment rate, I've seen it range anywhere from 76% all the way up to 86%. Even a couple of places mentioning 88% unemployed, meaning up to 88% of the blind community doesn't have a job or never has had a job. That's a lot of people. A lot of people. And so a lot of these people have to rely on federal aid from the Social Security Administration and get on a program called SSI, or Supplemental Security Income. God, if I could talk. Anyway, and I'm on that program mainly because the only job I had in the last 2 years was 2 minimum wage jobs, and the fact that I'm an adult just now starting out. Now, once I get established and hopefully get a job, a well-paying job, I won't need supplemental security income anymore, and my case could be closed from the Social Security Administration. Now, other things that are included in terms of World Services for the Blind are things like keyboarding skills, because think about it. A lot of sighted people a lot of them type by looking at the keyboard and looking at the letters. But blind people are forced to do something called touch typing, which means typing by feel. You have to literally know what letter is above, for example, you literally have to know in your head, okay, Q is above the A, the one key in the number row is above the Q. Z is below the A. Caps lock is next to the A. You know what I'm saying? You have to know that for every single keyboard key. Not to mention you have to know what finger to use to press that key, which is daunting, especially for people who have never used a computer in their lives. Thankfully, I already know how to type. Now, I am still in keyboarding because honestly, I'm finding there are some things that the Illinois School for the Visually Impaired did not teach me or help me with, and I don't even know some of them if they even caught me with these. For example, did you know that you're actually supposed to use the right shift key when you're typing with your left hand and the left shift key when you're typing with your right hand for capital letters? If not, welcome to my boat. I didn't either. Only found that out when I was doing a dictation testing lesson, per se, where the program that they use, which is called Fun with Typability, reads off a set of words and I have to type them as fast as I can and as accurately as I can. It said, quote, "You're doing very well, except you're using the wrong shift key. Remember, when using the left hand, you want to press and hold the right shift key." And I'm like, wait, what? I've typed since I was 6 years old, and I've always used the wrong shift key, apparently. So, that's been something tough to get over because it's been so ingrained in my brain that I've had to literally stop and be like, think, okay, press this shift key, then press that, then release this key, then release that key. You know what I'm saying? It's anyway, other things that could be included in my future for World Services for the Blind in terms of the pre-vocational or generalized classes are employment prep, financial literacy, and there was one other that I thought I remembered hearing, but I forget what it was. Then every day we also have a group topic period where we discuss things such as grooming yourself, appearance at a job, dress code, professionalism, solving problems at the job, and things like that. Or sometimes we'll just discuss meditation. We'll do meditation activities to kind of just ease our brains away from the workload for a little bit. Anyway, so that's what the program is. And once I finish this pre-vocational stuff, I will go into classes that are centered around my assistive technology instruction certification. Now, what's really cool about this is when I get to a certain point in the program for assistive technology, I'm actually going to be, quote unquote, teaching the new clients in the general pre-vocational class for assistive technology. Meaning that I'm going to be getting real-world, on-site job experience teaching the instruction curriculum for the assistive technology pre-vocational class. Because the reason I know this is because my instructor, both of them actually, I've had two of them so far. One of them an online instructor that met with me over Zoom, and then the other one that I'm with currently, an in-person instructor that I'm meeting with one-on-one in the classroom every day, are actually students, or not necessarily students, but clients here training to become assistive technology instructors. So that's kind of cool. Now, in terms of, to my Discord audience in particular, I want to apologize for not being active on Discord as much and talking. I have been dealing with a lot of busyness. I have been, as I said before in the video, I've been working on things from like 8:30 because actually breakfast is at 7. So I have to be ready to go with all my stuff at 7 a.m., done eating by 7:45 a.m., and in class by 8 a.m. Then I get a tiny break for about 15 minutes at 9:30 in the morning. And then at noon, I have lunch until 1 o'clock. Now, at 1 o'clock, that's when I have my next set of classes. A tiny break of 15 minutes at 2:30, and then I get let out at 4:30, and I'm free to go back to my room until dinner at 5:30. So as you can see, it's kind of a busy schedule around here. Now, does that mean I don't want to talk to you guys on Discord? Oh, hell no. Hell no. Matter of fact, I would like to be able to get in touch again and kind of reconnect, because now that I'm settled in, I feel like I could, be able to go back to my hobbies and such. In fact, I have gone back to my hobbies in a lot of ways. As you guys have seen on YouTube videos, I've posted numerous weather radio broadcast cycles from all over Arkansas, mainly Little Rock National Weather Service office stations, but also one Jackson, Mississippi National Weather Service forecast office station, that being in Fountain Hill, Arkansas, and the other station that's out of office being WNG 725 out of El Dorado, Arkansas, which is served by the National Weather Service office down in Shreveport, Louisiana. Now, I can tell you there's going to be more on the way, because the tropo openings down here are insane. In fact, last night, I was able to DX from Little Rock, Arkansas, all the way over to Broken Bow, Oklahoma. Now, that might not sound crazy, but on FM, I was able to get a station from Mena, Arkansas, which, according to one of my friends, shout out to him, he's a Facebook follower, or a Facebook friend of mine. We talk on Messenger all the time about radio DXing. He calculated the distance using my address and did it as the crow flies, and it's around 147 miles from my location to Mena, Arkansas. And that's not even getting to the border of Oklahoma. The border of Oklahoma is probably another 50 miles. So likely I was getting a station close to 200 miles away, which is actually pretty good considering this season for scanning hasn't been the greatest. So I promise I will definitely continue to get broadcast cycle videos. Now, as you might have also noticed, I've already gotten some weather alerts down here. In fact, it wasn't even 2 days after matter of fact, I think it was that first night. Yeah, it was either that first night or the night after when we had a severe thunderstorm watch issued for 4 counties within the WXJ55 listening area. And they ended up issuing severe storm warnings for all over the place, even outside the watch. Why they didn't expand it to include Little Rock, I don't know. Because Little Rock even got placed under a couple of special weather statements, one of which had 55-mile-an-hour winds on it, and it had a may intensify tag on it. I'm like, okay, you need to expand this watch now. Well, they didn't. And it ended up intensifying. Now, I didn't get the warning because at that point in time, the storm knocked the transmitter, which is located in western Pulaski County, off the air. Yeah. Whoops. So, yeah. Now, in terms of other exciting news that has happened around here, I have an exciting story to tell. And this is going to probably be the end of this video, but I want to use it to kind of educate the blind or educate people about my conditions and, how I can do things just as well as a lot of sighted people can. So, here in Little Rock, of course, we have rideshare services. We have Uber, we have Lyft. That's pretty much the two we have. And then we also have Lynx, which is a bus system. Now, my Lynx application is pending approval. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks for that to be approved. But in the meantime, with the help of my orientation and mobility instructor yesterday, who happens to be an intern, her internship ends this Friday, sadly. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and shout her out on YouTube. Her name is Sarah Peppard. She has an Instagram page called, I think it's Guiding Steps or something. Guiding Blind Steps or something, something along those lines. And she posts videos and photos and posts about how blind people do things. Things like crossing the street, calling for a transportation, making purchases, things like that. Just simple things that sighted people do all the time. And today I managed to be able to add on to possibly her Instagram story as I gave a testimonial about what happened last night. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yesterday, with the help of my orientation and mobility instructor, Sarah, she helped me to set up an account with Uber and an account with Lyft. And I had been wanting to get off campus for a while. Now, I had technically gotten off campus this past Monday. However, it wasn't exactly the kind of off campus I was wanting, because starting this weekend, this past Saturday, thankfully I'm feeling much better from this now, but after lunch, at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I started feeling really just kind of woozy. Not necessarily complete vertigo, but it was kind of in and out. Dizziness, hot flashes, chills, you name it. And I thought, okay, maybe my blood sugar isn't, or my electrolytes or something like that aren't fully where they are supposed to be. I figured, maybe I didn't eat enough for lunch. So I waited until dinner. And after dinner, it kind of got better. So I didn't think anything of it. Then, on Sunday, I wake up and I'm a little shaky before breakfast. But other than that, I'm fine. And that goes away too later. Then, Sunday afternoon, I'm sitting on my bed reading a book, minding my own business. Next thing I know, I'm on the floor slumped over. I do not remember falling. The only reason I knew I had fallen, number one, is because I was on the floor, and number two, because I had scratched my hand on the corner of the desk next to my bed on the way down, and there was blood oozing from the puncture. That's the only reasons I knew I had fallen. So I got myself up, and when I stood up, I was extremely wobbly on my feet. I was extremely dizzy and shaky. Shaky like I've never been shaky before. It looked like I was shivering, but I wasn't shivering. In fact, I was far from it because right before I fell, one thing I did notice was there was sweat pouring off of my forehead and body. It felt like I had run a marathon. And so I checked the temperature using my talking alarm clock, which has a temperature thermometer in it. Matter of fact, I'm going to come over here and demonstrate that for you so you can hear what I'm talking about. Read where it's also going to say the time.
It's 7:40 p.m. The temperature is 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
So as you can see, not exactly a hot room. It's not exactly hot in here. Matter of fact, it's a little chilly for how I like it. So that's when I really started to think, okay, something's wrong. So I talked to Mom about it, and she said, well, if it's not better in the morning, you might want to go get it checked out. Monday morning arrives, and I wake up at 5:30, extremely dizzy, like the whole room was spinning. It felt like the whole room was spinning. Shaky again, and sweat pouring off of my body. And the weird thing is, I had no nausea or anything. No vomiting, no nausea, nothing. It was the weirdest thing. So I thought maybe my body was just yelling at me saying, hey, it's time for breakfast. So I waited for breakfast, which was at 7 o'clock, as I've already said in this video. So I get down to breakfast and I start eating, and instead of getting better, it got worse. Way worse. In fact, it got so bad that as I was sitting there, I started wobbling back and forth and like side to side in my chair, uncontrollably. And this was according to a cited housing staff member. And then he also came up and he looked at my face and he says, your face is blood red. And I'm thinking, okay, this is not good. And my parents had suggested, okay, maybe you're just anxious and you're just reacting to anxiety, which I do have anxiety. Don't get me wrong, I do have an anxiety disorder that is diagnosed and I'm on medication for it. But that is not how my body reacts to anxiety. Not to mention, my heart rate at this point was spiking. Because I could feel it in my chest. I could just feel it. Boom, 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 boom. It felt like I had just run a marathon or done some sort of vigorous exercise. So at this point, my brain's going, oh crap, I need to get to the hospital now. Because my body is saying, there is something wrong with you, and I didn't know what it was. So I called the ambulance, which kudos to me, I did that all by myself. Now, was it fun? Hell no. But one thing that one of my teachers noted was when I was both on the phone with the ambulance, or with 911 dispatch, with the fire department, as well as when the fire department and paramedics actually arrived, they were very impressed. She was very impressed about how I was able to rattle off my eye condition, describe my eye condition, describe how I had a history in the past of seizures, describe how I had passed out on Sunday, described all of my medications, possible side effects, yada, yada, yada. She said most people, blind or sighted of my age, can't do that. And when they're questioned about it, they say, well, that's not important. I can tell you right now, that is very important. Very important. Because, especially the fact that I had fallen Sunday, and the fact that I was experiencing high heart rate at the time. Because right after I said that, they're like, okay, we need to take your blood pressure. They took my blood pressure, and I think it was the highest blood pressure I've ever seen, at least on my body. Now, I know I'm getting a little technical here, but the lower the number, in most cases, unless it's too low, you generally want to hover around 120/70, give or take. And even that's a little low for me. My blood pressure was a crazy and a very alarming 162/99, with a heart rate of 145 beats per minute and a pulse ox, or blood oxygen reading, of just 94%. Now, I know what you're thinking. 94%, that's good. No, it's not. Not when your reading is typically 97 to 99%. That is where I typically fall. I was 3 points off, which was also explaining why at that point in time I was starting to get shortness of breath, because my breathing rate was fast. They said my respiration rate was 30 times in a minute. So it was about, about twice as fast as it should be. Not to mention I was breathing extremely shallow. I was just kind of doing that throughout my breathing. It wasn't very deep breaths. It was almost like I was hyperventilating. So they decided, your best bet is to get in the ambulance. They put me in the ambulance, took me to the ER. On the way to the ER, the highest heart rate they saw was a staggering 150 beats per minute. That's insane. And I was doing nothing. I was just laying on the stretcher. So there was obviously something wrong. Now, a little later on, I'll tell you about how my body is weird. So stick around for that. And I apologize again for the length of this video, but I just want to give you guys a general update on how my life's been treating me and what's been going on. Anyway, so we get to the hospital and they check me in. They put me on the monitors and all that, and it got us all concerned, myself, the doctor, and the nurses, because once I was laying down, my heart rate and respiration rates, which is a fancy pants way of saying your breathing rate, jumped dramatically up and plunged down within very short periods of time. For example, one time they took my heart rate and it was at 144. Not even 5 minutes later, they come back and check it, and it's at 68. So there was obviously something going on. For your heart to jump that fast, and then not even 10 minutes later, they check it again, and it's at 139. And I wasn't doing a damn thing. I was laying on a bed. Not to mention, I should also say, when I was in the ambulance on the stretcher, I don't usually get car sick. Even if I'm laying down the seat, I don't get car sick. I nearly threw up twice on that ride to the hospital. When we were turning onto the interstate, I started to see stars in my eyes, flashes of light and such, which for me, that's a signal, you're about ready to pass out. Because that's what's happened before when I've seen that and gotten dizzy, is I've passed out. So I even told the paramedic, I said, beware, I'm feeling dizzy. I think I might be getting ready to faint. And thankfully I didn't. But at the time, that's when my heart rate went up to 150. Anyway, So they did a blood test on me, took like 5 tubes of blood. They took a ton of blood out of me. Started me on some IVs, some IV fluids. Because another thing I had told the nurses that I had noticed Saturday and Sunday, now this is going to get a little weird, but my body wasn't retaining fluids very well. Say I would drink a bottle of water, 5 minutes later, I would be peeing that bottle of water out and feeling thirsty again. So, my body was obviously not retaining water and fluids very well either. So they started me on some IV fluids, and oddly enough, my body retained those just fine. Matter of fact, I didn't have to go to the bathroom at all throughout the day that I was there. Nor did I feel thirsty, hardly at all, except for when I ate a small lunch. So that was weird. So after all the tests were done in terms of the blood tests, they took me back for a CT scan because my heart rate, though it had started to settle down and my breathing rate the same way, they were still jumping like crazy, though not as high and not as low as they were previously before I started on the medicines they were giving me. So they were worried that maybe there's something going on in the heart or the lungs. Maybe there's a blockage somewhere. Well, that turned up nothing. So then they did an MRI because they're still seeing it. And they're like, okay, well, maybe this is bleeding in the brain, considering the dizziness and the fact that he actually passed out. Well, that turned up nothing. So they don't know what happened. They don't know what happened. They concluded that it's likely a virus. And the reason they concluded it's likely a virus is because, as I alluded to earlier, my body is weird. How? When I get sick with certain infections, I don't exhibit normal symptoms. A classic example of this would be strep throat. Remember how I said I have a history of seizures? Well, starting back on Election Day 2016, I remember the day exactly because it was so crazy and changed my life forever. At least I thought it did. It was evening. And I was sitting at home minding my own business. When next thing I know, I started convulsing and having seizures. Grand mal seizures, to be exact. Before then, I had had what are just called dyscognitive seizures, which means you basically just black out for 30 seconds. You don't pass out. Your mind just kind of goes blank. Like, there were times when I would freeze mid-sentence and my mouth would just be hanging open. And afterwards, I'd come back, kind of stutter a little bit, and then just go on like nothing happened. But these were grand mal seizures. Big ones at that. And I had them back to back to back 8 times, back to back to back. That's when my parents decided to call 911. It's a good thing they did, because in the time that it took for the ambulance to arrive, I had 5 more back to back to back. Now, at this point, I was obviously semi-conscious because I don't remember talking. I don't remember saying anything, doing anything. My parents remember me doing stuff, but I don't. And then when the ambulance arrived, and I was in the ambulance and they had me on some monitors, I had a smaller grand mal seizure on the way to the hospital. So once I was in the hospital bed in the ER, they settled me in and immediately put me on an IV. Immediately. And that was an IV of medications that would hopefully, and thankfully it did, stop my brain from seizing. And thankfully it did. But here's where the weird part comes in. They did additional tests because they asked, has he been exposed to any sort of infections or anything? And my parents said, not that we know of, but he has been in school. So they did a throat swab and a nose swab. Guess what? I came back positive for the mid stages of a strep throat infection. But I had no symptoms. None. Absolutely none. No coughing, no fever, no sore throat, no runny nose, no headaches, nothing. You would have thought I was perfectly healthy. And to think this was possibly just a one-time occurrence and poof, we're done. Oh no. Oh no. It happened, in fact, I think 2 or 3 times in the next year that I was called to the taken to the hospital because I was having seizures that wouldn't stop. Every single time, the result, strep throat. So I'm weird. My body's pretty weird in the fact that some infections, it does not react right. And they suspect that I might have gotten some sort of virus and my body is not displaying normal symptoms in terms of what happened on Monday. So, and I suspect that too because Tuesday I woke up, still not perfect, but I felt way better than I did. I was still shaky. And then Tuesday during the day, I still suffered mild tremors, but they were off and on. They came in waves, and they were done fairly quickly. And then I woke up today, and I suffered even more mild tremors, but they were less severe than Tuesday's. And they didn't last as long as Tuesdays, nor did they happen as frequently as Tuesdays. So that was my experience of getting off campus. However, as I said earlier, it wasn't exactly what I had in mind when I said I want to get off campus. So, what did I do? Tuesday night, since I had an Uber account set up, I scheduled a ride to Texas Roadhouse. Now, to many that wouldn't seem like such a big deal. But for me, since that was my first ever Uber ride, that was a huge deal. I was extremely nervous and extremely jittery. I had a bunch of what ifs going around in my head, like what if the driver isn't nice? What if this happens? What if that happens? Well, as soon as I met the driver, kudos to her. Shout out to Katrina, my Uber driver. Amazing woman. Definitely wanted to do anything that she could to help, even though she had no idea how to help. She wanted to do anything she could to help, especially after seeing that I was blind. Because when we arrived at the restaurant, a lot of times on public transport, you arrive at a restaurant or a store and they just drop you off and let you find the door or wherever you're supposed to go on your own and then drive off. Not this woman. She turned her car off, actually got out of her car and asked, "Do you need help finding the door, sir?" And I answered gratefully, "Yes, I do. Please." And so she helped me find the door of that Texas Roadhouse. Not only did she do that, she walked in with me to the counter, made sure the hostess that was on duty that night saw me at the counter, and when they got an acknowledgement that I was indeed seen, she walked back to her car. Kudos to that lady. She did everything right that I love from people like that. Because, think about it, I had never been to that Texas Roadhouse. That's a big, unfamiliar space. And it's not like I can just see the door and find my way in. Not to mention, at that time, there were people everywhere because it was, 5:30. And what are people likely doing at 5:30? Eating dinner. Anyway, so I walked in, and the first question the management asked me is, "Hey there, do you need one of our Braille menus, sir?" And that floored me. A lot of times, when I walk into restaurants, either if it be by myself, with a cousin, with any family member, with my parents, with a friend, whatever, it's the friend, the family member, or myself having to ask, "Excuse me, do you have a Braille menu?" And then half the time we do that, the staff at the restaurant, the wait staff, the host, even sometimes the manager, is like, "Well, what's a Braille menu? I don't even know what a Braille menu would look like." Like, really? Aren't you taught that in your training? Apparently not. Not to mention, one other thing it made me feel was like I belonged, like I fit in. Because that type of question allowed me to form a connection with that hostess right away. Then the hostess actually guided me to the table, physically guided me to the table. She allowed me to take her arm, walked in front of me, and that's a technique that we blind folk, as well as the educators of the blind, tend to call human guide. It used to be called sighted guide, but now it's a different term called human guide, because in reality, there are other blind people that can guide the blind. It has happened. Matter of fact, I've had it happen to me multiple times, and the people that have guided me, they'll be in front using their cane, and I'll be behind them as they're walking quickly down the sidewalk, and nothing's happened in terms of anything bad. Now, when I get to that table, my waitress, she comes over, and I'm going to shout her name out too. Shout out to you, Micah, at Texas Roadhouse, Little Rock, Arkansas. One of the best waitresses I've ever had. Why? She introduces herself, of course, and then gives me time to cruise the menu. However, she was very attentive, always coming back to check on me like every 5-10 minutes. Now, some people would be like, "Well, wouldn't you find that annoying?" No, because I've actually been to restaurants where the wait staff expects me to be able to see them coming, and when I finally say, "Hello, is anyone there? Is anyone there?" And finally a random person says, "I'll get their attention for you," the wait staff says, "Oh, well, I thought you could see me coming, so I figured you'd just wave at me." Really? I came in with a white cane. What does a white cane symbolize? It symbolizes my eyeballs don't work. I can't see a damn thing. Hello, put 2 and 2 together here. Think about it. But this waitress, she wasn't like that. She always came back to check on me, and she respected that it takes me longer to read a Braille menu than it does for a sighted person to read a print menu. Because as a sighted individual, you guys can skim and scan through the menu and find specific sections that you want. For example, I was hoping to order an appetizer. Well, in their menu in particular, at least that branch's menu, in the Braille menu, the appetizers were in the middle of the menu near sides. Now, was I offended by this? No. It's just how the menu was arranged. So, I had to read every section before the appetizers section thoroughly all the way through until I found appetizers, because I can't skim and scan. And one thing you got to remember too is Braille readers are slower than print readers. In fact, they usually say that a print reader, an average fluent print reader, can read around twice as many words in a minute as a Braille reader. That's how slow we are when we read Braille. Now, does that mean we're slow readers? No. Now, to some school districts we might be, but to people who understand, no, we're not slow. Anyway, and when I was ready for something, to be ordered, when she came around, I would just say, I'm still cruising the menu, but I am ready, for example, last night with my appetizer. I am ready for to order some fried pickle chips. And she's like, okay, I'll put that in for you. Then she did another amazing thing. At that point, I had drank almost all of my soda. Not only did she take and refill my soda, she let me know she was taking and refilling my soda, but not only that, when she came back, she set my glass down on the table and literally said, your glass is to your right near the corner. And then when I was searching for it and was having a hard time finding it, she asked, do you need help finding it? Or how would you like me to do this? And I said, more than likely, would you mind putting my glass, and then I pointed to the right of the menu. That way I know where it's at and I can move it where I want it. And she did that. She was like, yes, absolutely I can do that. She put it down, and that's where she put the glass for the rest of the night. When I moved it, she put the glass in the exact same place for the rest of the night. I was very impressed with that. Then I ordered my meal, consisting of beef tips over a bed of loaded mashed potatoes. And I ordered them what's called, and here's a term for you sighted folk, chef's cut. Now, of course, the waitress did not know what that meant, but she was very eager to help in terms of knowing what it meant. So I explained to her, and she asked a bunch of questions about it, and I answered every one of them. Now, for you guys who are wondering what chef's cut is, I'm going to explain it to you. So, for example, the beef tips. When they come out, they obviously need cut up, right? Well, for a blind person, cutting up food like steak is not so easy, because we first have to feel the plate and find the piece of steak that we want to cut up. Then we align our fork with about a bite-sized chunk of the piece of steak using a combination of our fingers as well as general awareness of the length and width of the piece of steak. Then we start cutting. And we repeat the process over and over again. However, we're doing everything by feel. Thus, cutting takes probably about 2 to 3 times as long as a sighted person would. Thus, I've been in many situations where by the time I'm done cutting my food, or let's say tossing a salad or cutting up a salad, my steak is cold, my salad is soggy, and nothing is fresh anymore. So chef's cut, instead of me cutting it up and doing all that, when the food is back in the kitchen, the cook or whoever is in charge of making it, and I've even had cases where the waitress will do this if the kitchen staff forgets, they will cut the meat even do things such as mix in the toppings on your mashed potatoes, or I'm just using my meal as an example, and they will toss your salad and cut up your salad. That way, when you get the food, all you have to do is start eating and you get fresh food. That's what chef's cut is. Now, you might be thinking, well, is that even appropriate to ask a waitress? Yes, it is very appropriate. As a matter of fact, all the waitresses that I've had that I've asked for that, they are more than willing to comply. And my waitress was amazing because apparently at first they didn't do the chef's cut right with my salad. And she says, "Sorry, your salad took so long. I had to send it back 2 times. The second time saying, 'Hey, this guy wants it cut up and tossed. Please do it right.'" And I said, "Kudos to you, ma'am. You spoke up and you said, 'This is what my customer wants. Now do it.'" Most waitresses that I've had wouldn't have done that. Anyway, so I went through eating my meal, and the best thing that she did when she set my plates down is she told me, she says, okay, for example, for my steak plate, since it was all cut up, they had to kind of scrape the mashed potatoes into one part of the plate and the steak into another, which I loved that they did. But when she set the plate down, she says, okay, the plate's right in front of you. Your steak is all along the bottom edge of your plate, around 6 o'clock on the clock face, with your mashed potatoes around 12 o'clock on the clock face. I loved the fact that she did that, because a clock face is something I can picture. I can picture seeing a clock face and the numbers being oriented how they are. Thus, when she told me where that stuff was, I wasn't just searching around trying to find it. I could easily just take my fork, point it, let's say I wanted to bite a steak at about 5 or 6 o'clock, put it down, stab, and I had a piece of steak. Then, at the end, when I was paying, she helped me pay the bill. No joke. She brought my bill out, read my total, and then I said I would like to pay with my card. I asked, could you please help me with this, or is this uncomfortable for you? And she says, no way, this is not uncomfortable for you. We have kiosks at these tables, and quite honestly, they're not the most friendly to sighted people. So she took my debit card, which, yeah, I understand handing your debit card to a stranger is kind of a risky move. But I knew I could trust her. So I handed her my debit card, and she went through the process of putting my card numbers in on the kiosk, selecting how much I wanted to pay in terms of tips, and ultimately submitting my bill for payment. Then I told her that I was taking an Uber, because at that point in time I had already scheduled my Uber ride back to World Services for the Blind. So she did another thing. She took me outside after giving me a refilled soda that I hadn't drank, a to-go cup for that. She took me outside and allowed me to sit down on a bench by the door to wait for my Uber to arrive. Then she periodically came out and checked on me to make sure I was doing okay, and to see whether my Uber had arrived yet. Now, the most amazing part of this story for me was the second Uber driver. He was so kind. Shout out to my second Uber driver, Samuel. Thank God you exist. You are one of the kindest strangers I've ever met. You know, it's nerve-wracking relying on strangers to take you where you want to go. But when you're blind, that's the only option you have besides walking. And if I was to go from World Services to that Texas Roadhouse by walking, that's a long walk. It's about 5 miles. Not to mention 2 of those miles along an interstate. So, not exactly the most safe walk to do. Now, what I ended up doing was, as I said, I sat on that bench, and when that driver arrived, he got out of his car, asked me if I would like him to help me get to the car, and of course I said yes, because, you know, that's a parking lot. It's dangerous. It's a big parking lot. Then, when we got in the car, he showed his true spirit. His love for people with disabilities shined. His compassion shined. His true caring nature flew out in abundance. And honestly, it caused me to cry a little bit. Even thinking about it causes me almost to cry. Because one thing that we as disabled people are subjected to oftentimes when we're out in public is judgment, with another thing being hateful judgment and harassment. Now, I gotta say, his kindness and compassion and caringness towards people like me, it reminded me of those that I've seen with my online family through Discord and YouTube and Facebook and all these other social media platforms I'm on. You guys accept me for who the heck I am. I'm a person that just so happens to be blind. The only difference, my eyes don't work. Does that mean I can't love the same hobbies as you? No. And you guys acknowledge and accept that. This driver was the same way. He said he gave a motto that he teaches his family and himself every day. Kindness doesn't cost cash. Now, that cash he's speaking of, it can be real money, or figuratively speaking, symbolic money. With symbolic money being, in order to hate somebody, you have to think what will set them off. You have to think about what will tick them off the most, and how will it tick them off the most, and why will it tick them off the most. But with kindness, all you have to do is say something as simple as, "Hey, how's your day going?" And it immediately sets a connection, a positive connection. So he was very kind, and when we got back to the facility, there was somebody, because I had called and waited, asked for somebody to wait outside to help me get back in the building. When we got back, there was somebody outside waiting as I had asked, one of the housing staff. And this driver got out of the car, helped me get out of the car, and directed me, physically guided me up the stairs to where this person who was waiting to let me back in the building, was standing. Afterwards, we said our goodbyes, and the driver walked back to his car and drove off. But honestly, that experience last night made me feel so independent and so grown up. So much like I fit in, like I was a part of the society, like I truly belonged here in this city. It's the little things like that that have the biggest impact. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you guys so much for watching all of this video, if you're still with me. And I apologize again for the long naturedness of this update. Matter of fact, I've done this for been recording for about an hour and 15 minutes now. So yeah, I apologize for the long natured update here. I just had a lot to say. And note, just because I'm down in Arkansas and I'm beginning a career in a trade school, I will not be quitting on YouTube. I will not be quitting on Discord. I may be uploading less frequently or at a erratic schedule or talking at an erratic time, but I'm not quitting. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your night, and remember, be kind to each other. Kindness doesn't cost cash. Gabriel Gregson, signing off.